Yes, people, welcome back to another video. And Aston Villa fans, I'm talking to you today because you signed Harvey Elliot on deadline day. And it was one of them moves that kind of come out of nowhere. We've seen you looking at Jadon Sancho and obviously getting that over the line. And then next, it was Harvey Elliot. And I was kind of like, okay, I see what Aston Villa are doing here. You know, after the defeat to Crystal Palace, we know that you needed to go out and get some plays in. Unai Emery made that clear. He's not been happy with the transfer window, and I can understand it because Aston Villa have looked a bit flat. You've seen it going into this season so far, failing to get a win, playing at home, getting beat by Crystal Palace, drawing at home to Newcastle first game and then losing to Brentford. Well, that is not the Aston Villa that Aston Villa fans want to see. And they've needed to shuffle the back. And they have now. They've done that. Jadon Sancho comes in from Manchester United, a natural winger, and they need that on that left or right-hand side. He gives you versatility. He gives you a talent. He gives you that potential. He gives you that unknown factor. He's been at Man United, hasn't quite worked out. Chelsea, hot and cold. But now will he find his feet at Aston Villa under a coach like Unai Emery that hopefully can get the best out of him? Well, Jadon Sancho needs to also get the best out of himself. But the one that interests me more is Harvey Elliot. Because only 48 to 72 hours ago, it was Lucas Paqueta that was potentially coming through the doors at Villa Park. We saw Paqueta. Done. That was squashed after West Ham beat Nottingham Forest. But they had to turn their attentions to someone else. And I really like this move. I really did like this move. When I saw David Ornstein put this out, Aston Villa closing in on deadline day deal to sign Harvey Elliott from Liverpool, I was like, yes. It's a loan with a buy obligation, 35 million plus. Only a few months ago, they wanted 50 million potentially from Brighton, who refused to pay that. And Harvey Elliott, 22 years of age, has been sitting there, twiddling his thumbs, waiting for the next opportunity to see if another club comes in for him. And they did. And I think this is a very, very good piece of business by Aston Villa. And I'm going to tell you why. And I think you guys are going to agree with me anyway. Firstly, let's talk about Aston Villa and what they've done this season. The setup. It has confused me so much that Unai Emery has gone with more of a defensive setup. It didn't work against Newcastle. It didn't work against Brentford. And then he tried to change it by bringing Daniel Malen and Evan Gaswan in. But it's quite hard to throw them in from the cold against a team like Crystal Palace, who, by the way, were unbeaten in 13 games going into that game. It was going to be hard, especially for someone like Gaswan and Malen, who've not really played a lot of Premier League minutes, let alone starts. And it didn't quite work. They had to change it up, bring in Benduia, and then they got better in the second half, but the game was done. And it was a masterclass from Oliver Glasner. However, you now look at Aston Villa and you sit back and you reflect over the international break and you say, well, what do they need? What's been missing? And for me, it's someone that can play on the right-hand side, a bit opposite to Rodgers, what he does on the left-hand side, but someone that can be a ball carrier, someone that can create. Aston Villa's midfield has been starving of creativity, which is why Buendia made such a big impact against Crystal Palace. Even though they couldn't score, we saw the difference. But Buendia hasn't quite got the legs. He's on the decline now. He's not the same player he was at Norwich. So you look at the areas that Buendia was operating in, and you're like, who can do that? But who can do that better and have an effect? Who's left-footed? Who's hungry to perform? Who's hungry to get in that World Cup squad for England at the World Cup next summer? Well, none other than Harvey Elliott. The move makes sense. The guy can play on the right wing. He can play in a midfield 3. He can play in a midfield 5 and play just off the striker. It makes so much sense. And look, Harvey Elliott is one of them players that I believe personally is waiting for his breakout. He's waiting for that opportunity. And this Villa team being in Europe, this Villa team having great fans, this Villa team coming off the back of having 1 point from 3 games so far, which is not good enough. They needed something. They needed a spark. They needed an edge. And Harvey Elliott can provide that. It was just a couple months ago that he was helping England lift the under-21 trophy. But not only just help them lift the under-21 trophy, he was the catalyst in that team. He was the main guy in that team when it came to midfield and the attack. He was the link in that team. He was the guy that was standing up and being counted for. And that does a lot because it shows this. And you need this when you go to Aston Villa, and you need it when you play in Europe, and you need it when you go into a team on a deadline day transfer that's coming off a low confidence. You need to go in there now and say, I deserve to be here. I've won a Premier League. I've won England the under-21 European Championship. I'm coming here to start. I'm coming here to play with Rodgers, and I'm coming here to make an impact. And I feel like Harvey Elliott's going to do that. Because you look at the midfield options that they have in Kamara, who's brilliant in the defensive-minded side of the game. You've got Tielemans, who's a very good passer and got long-range shots, but sometimes struggles with the legs. You've got John McGinn. He can play out on the left. He can play in midfield, but I don't really look at him as a central midfielder no more as such. He's a squad player for me now, and he can play in certain games, but I think he's more of a squad player. You know, you look at Onana. He's now injured, but they've got a lot of defensive, more minded midfielders in Tielemans, who's just a central midfielder, but you've got Onana. You've got Boubacar Kamara there. You've got McGinn. I look at it and I'm saying Aston Villa needs something. They need to have creativity. They need to have a spark. They need to get Ollie Watkins into the game because he's starving up there. So when you now look at it and you say, right, okay, Donyell Marlon, Jadon Sancho, Gusson, Rodgers, Watkins, Harvey Elliot, all of a sudden with them two signings of Jadon Sancho and Harvey Elliot, you're thinking, okay, Aston Villa can actually do something a bit more productive in the final third. They've needed it. And I think in that midfield, they're crying out for creativity. I have to be honest, I watch a lot of football and I like Aston Villa. I respect them as a football club. But when I've watched them, they've looked so flat and basic and pedestrian in midfield. I understood why they were going for Lucas Paqueta, because I would have been like, he would be perfect for them. Because he can play Tielemans and Kamara and then have Paqueta playing more in the 10. Now you can throw Harvey Elliott in there, have Rodgers off the left, have Jadon Sancho or whoever it is off the right. Yeah, Jadon Sancho, you can have Jadon Sancho, Morgan Rodgers, Harvey Elliott, and Ollie Watkins. All of a sudden, you're like, okay, this attack's got something about it now. A bit like how Everton have transformed their team. And now look, I know Aston Villa fans will say they're better than Everton, but when we look at the transfer market and what they've done to flip the script, Everton have done that. Ilman Ndiaye, Dewsbury Hall, Tiano Barry coming through, Jack Grealish, a former villain, you know, all of a sudden you're looking at Everton and you're like, right, they can score goals now. They're adding a bit more creativity. The fans are going to games now thinking, okay, at least we've got players that can create, can score. It's just sometimes mentally you need to switch it up. And I think one of the hardest things to do as well, when I look at Premier League teams that have a manager for quite a few years, have a team that get into Europe, have a team that are consistent, sometimes you need to freshen it up. Sometimes you need to add 2 or 3 or 4 fresh faces to get the hunger going again, to get players thinking about their positions, players having to improve and say, right, I want to keep my place. Well, I have to step up. Otherwise, next man's going to take my spot. And I just feel like Villa have got a bit comfortable and the players have got a bit complacent and a bit more chilled. And it's like, no, you've got other teams in the Premier League now, like Crystal Palace, that are stepping it up, that are raising the bar, that are coming for your spots in the top 7, top 8. That's what they want to do now. Aston Villa were only in the Champions League last season, or the season before that. Sorry, excuse my French. So when you look at it, Villa have had to tweak it a little bit. They've not made a lot of signings in this window. They have been quiet. You know, the same old Konsa, Mings, Matty Cash, you know, Maatsen, Lucas Digne. I feel like I've seen them play for a couple of years now, you know, and they've had to tweak it a little bit. And I think that Harvey Elliott and Jadon Sancho just give them a bit of different creativity, a different spark, a different edge. And I really like the Harvey Elliott one because for me, signing him for 35 million when Liverpool wanted 50 million, that's knocked off some of the price already. You've got a 22-year-old that wants to play football, that wants to get in that England squad, is hungry to succeed and hungry to showcase himself. So he's coming there determined to help a team that's low of confidence. So this deal is a win-win for Aston Villa. And especially the tactical ability of him to play on the right, to play centrally as well. I really like this move. And I think he's going to have a positive impact for Aston Villa. I think he's going to be one of them players that the fans grow to like, and he's going to force himself into the starting 11, and he's going to force himself to stay there. I think he's going to be better than Jadon Sancho for Aston Villa. I think that. I think he's going to be better than Jadon Sancho. I think stylistically, he's got the low center of gravity. He can travel with it. He can score. He can create. He can play in different positions. And I just think he's ready for his breakout now. He's ready to play regular football. And you're not going to a team that's fighting relegation. You're going to a team that's going to be in Europe. You're going to a team that want to win and expect to win a lot of their home games against more than 50% of the teams in the league. So Aston Villa fans, I think you can be excited about this one, considering what's happened to you in the first 3 games of the window and Unai Emery screaming for signings. To get Jadon Sancho in, of course, the best Jadon Sancho is a good Jadon Sancho. A poor Jadon Sancho is a poor Jadon Sancho. But adding Harvey Elliot, who can play in that creative 10 role, can link up with Morgan Rogers, can play out on the right. We've seen what he can do for the England under-21s. It's now his time. And it's going to be his time to shine at Villa Park. Guys, make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe. That was my video reflecting on Aston Villa's deal for Harvey Elliott, which happened on deadline day. I think this is going to work perfectly. I think Villa have needed a midfielder like this who gives them a creative spark. And I'm hoping that it works out for him. Guys, make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe. Aston Villa fans in here, I really appreciate you guys watching the video. Show love for the love. On my way to 5K.